clay. It won't be a big plate, but it'd be like a saucer or a spoon rest or a big spoon rest, but everything about the process is still the same. Remember, get opposite the clay and the lumps in the clay. You're the center of gravity, so pull the clay towards you or push it away from you, but don't try to center it by squeezing it just on the sides, because then you wind up just passing that lump back and forth. The clay responds better if it has pressure on it from one direction only and down from the top. Now this thing of coning it up, this part of your hand on the bat, squeeze in, it has nowhere to go but up. As soon as you feel like it's going up and it's getting fatter at the top, then shift emphasis from the heel of your palm to the center of your palm, and then ride it to the top and keep squeezing. And it'll, you know, you're using all of this in here and this bottom edge as you go up. Then once you get it extended like that, put the heel of your thumb on top of it to push down, and keep your fingers wrapped around it and keep some pressure. In my case, I pull it towards me.
This is when I get the mushroom, that right there.
Right, well, you gotta keep in mind that whatever shape it is, you're giving it that shape with your hands and fingers, right? So I usually have my fingers sort of at a slight angle instead of completely horizontal, because then you get these big ridges in it from your fingers. So you do like this, and pull it towards you. Keep pressure on it while you're pushing it down. And try to make something that's sort of sloping cake-shaped mass, like a bundt cake without the hole in the middle, at least at that point. So in this case today, what we're going to do is the same thing as usual. Make a hole in the middle. Once the hole's as deep as you think it needs to be, then you're going to drag your thumb and your hand across the wheel like a tone arm on a record changer and open it up. And since we're going to make a plate, we're going to open it up a little farther than usual. Just keep right on going. Now try not to go downhill with your thumb as you go across. Everybody's always afraid they're going to run out of clay. So then they bear down on the clay and they wind up digging a hole right here and separating this part from this part. So make it wide and flat, but try to maintain the depth of the clay, the thickness. Then the wider and flatter the item is you're making, the more important it is to do that compression. Now we have one person who's having an issue with this compression thing who shall remain nameless.
Me. That was me.
Right. What you have to do is teach yourself how to put some constant pressure on that bearing down. It doesn't have to be a lot of pressure, just pressure, right? But you don't want to dig a hole in there, and you want it to be consistently thick from the center all the way to the outside corner and back again. Even if it's a little on the thin side, it's better for the pot to be at least consistently thin all the way to the outside edge, but you should try to leave it about 1/4 of an inch at least. And if you plan on making something where you're going to trim a deep foot in the back of it, then leave it 1/2 inch thick. So you can trim 1/4 inch out and have a raised foot on the back when you're trimming it. But that's just, I never trim feet on things. I just don't. I've done it. I know how to do it, but I just don't think it's necessary. But that's a question of design and taste, and we can talk more about that later. So anyway, you got this wide, so the basic form for everything is still the cylinder, wide, shallow cylinder. And you got this donut of clay out here again. Instead of pushing it in towards the middle, you're going to pull it straight up. And the wider the piece you're making, the more important it is to leave this lip a little fatter than the rest of it, because that helps control the form, right? So then when you go to make a plate form, you're going to pull it up and away at the same time in an arc like this. So try and imagine, here's the bottom, and you're going to go up this way, right? So I'm going to push in at the base, same as usual, and then I'm going to pull away and up at the same time, so you wind up with something that looks like a little shallow bowl. And then if you want to make it into a plate, you take this fat part at the top, and what I'm doing is putting my finger on the outside and rolling this out over my finger.
And your finger's underneath?
Yeah, my finger's right here.
Okay.
And I'm pulling that fat thing out over my finger. And I'm still leaving that edge a little thicker than the rest of it. All right, so that looks more like a small bowl. So if I'm making plates and it's a series and I want them all to match, I'll have two things. I'll have a set of calipers over here that I can set by the first one I make for the diameter. And if I'm making dinnerware, there are certain standard sizes for things. Like a dinner plate is 10.5 inches when it's finished. So that means with this clay that shrinks 10 to 12%, you're good if you make a dinner plate out of 3 pounds of clay and make it 12 inches in diameter, the same size as the bat. Right, and you can kind of use the bat as a gauge, just sight down over the top of it when you're making it. But I usually use the calipers, it's a little bit more precise. Once I've made the first plate and I'm happy with it and set the calipers, then each plate after that I'll throw to the caliper. So make sure that they're a shape that'll nest one inside the other and stack up. So a stack of 8 plates, I like a shallow curve in a plate like this. So that, and I'm using this kidney-shaped rib to get that curve I like every time. Now the other thing you need to keep in mind is that, well, that's still a little deep for a plate. And I said, well, here's the thing. And if you want a plate, you don't want finger ridges in it, because when you drag a spoon or a fork across it or a knife, clack, 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 that's annoying. It's like, scratching a blackboard with your fingernails. So I'll usually use, this is a tool that you all have. I'll get right here in the center and I'll smooth out that bottom surface. Make it nice and smooth. And then I'll come back in with this curved rib and get rid of that ridge I left behind. Now the thing you need to keep in mind, when a pot shrinks, it shrinks in every dimension. So that means as it begins to dry, it's going to, the thickness of it is going to shrink, the diameter is going to shrink, and the height is going to shrink. So that looks like a deep salad plate or dessert plate, or I don't know what you would call it, is going to get shorter when it shrinks. And by the time it's finished and goes through the firing process, and that's where it shrinks the most, it's the bisque firing doesn't shrink so much, the drying doesn't shrink so much. Together, that's maybe 5% of the shrinkage. But when it gets in the glaze kiln and goes all the way to its maturest temperature, that's when it really shrinks and you notice the difference. So you put something into the glaze kiln with glaze on it and it looks pretty good size, and it comes out, oh my God, what happened to it? So, and the larger the piece, the more you notice it. So I'll make these great big pots.